David Cabessa from Apple Times, and today I actually bought this camera from B&H Photography. They're a little expensive, but this is a very interesting camera. This is the era which I would call the Olympics of the camera age. It was a time when many companies like Canon, Nikon, Pentax were all on competition because technology for cameras in those days were very fast and they were getting a lot better. So technology was a lot cheaper and cameras with better specs were much cheaper to buy. So this is a Nikon FG. It was released in the early 80s. This is a beautiful camera. It is, believe it or not, you can use this like any other camera in today's days. It's a regular film camera. It has a 35 millimeter camera. There is film in here, so I cannot show you. They put it in. I was snapping some photographs. So this camera is semi-automatic, semi-manual. This camera can be automatic. It actually runs on batteries. So this camera is a battery camera. The cool feature also, it has also a timer. So back in the 80s, they had selfies. So this was a selfie camera. So yes, you can take selfies with this. As you can see that you have a couple of, this is your meter for different settings, 500 of a second, 250th a second, but I have it set to aperture so that it's all automatic. So this is very easy to use, so you don't have to worry about, you know, speeds and stuff like that. So it's done for you. So you just have to adjust this until the photo is focused and it looks good. On top over here, as you can see over here, it shows numbers. These numbers indicate how many photographs you have left. This one can actually hold 36 photographs. So, I mean, and the film for this is pretty well good quality. This happens to be a 50 millimeter, as you can see, it's a Nikon lens series E. This was actually one of the lenses you could buy for it. It's a 1.8 aperture is the low. I mean, this has 1.8 to 22. So the aperture is pretty good on here. You also the wideness of the lens goes up to about, as you can see, the lowest is 0.6 foot, and the highest is 20 feet. Or you can do infinity, which you just have to focus the camera for it to work. I happen to like old vintage cameras. Well, it's not really a vintage camera, but they're very well built. They're very well to use, and they're much better than today's cameras in many ways. And do not go tell people that, because everybody has their own opinion. Some people like digital cameras, many people like film cameras. A lot of professionals use film cameras. So as you can see, this is the lens. It's a pretty good lens. This lens actually is a 1.8. It came with a 1.4, so this is a pretty good lens for this camera. Nikon happens to be a more expensive camera, more premium than Canon, but they still are a good camera in many ways. Also, this has a flash, of course, like many cameras of its day. Comes with a lot of beautiful specs, and it also has the battery compartment on the bottom. This was a very compatible camera. It weighs about 2 pounds, a little less. As you can see, it's Japanese made. I happen to like Nikon. They are very expensive. The cheapest Nikon cameras that are good and are film cameras run you around $300 to $400 in today's standards. But Nikon has proven themselves over the years to be pretty superior with Canon and many of the great cameras of the day. So what makes this camera special than the cameras of its day? As you know, there was the Canon AE1, which was pretty popular. But this was the Nikon 4 FG. This had many models, and it sadly was discontinued in 1989. But it was an amazing camera of its day. I've heard many things nice about this camera. I've actually tested this camera. I found it to be a lot better than to be expected. I paid a lot of money for it, though. I got it on sale. So you can pick these up in B&H or eBay, but eBay I would be careful with cameras. they are not warranted and can be damaged, but this is 100% passed, so this camera is in working and good order. So the lens, of course, works still, as you can see, as its focus. It is a pretty good camera. Also, a nice thing, also has a grip thing, grip, which not many cameras had at the time, which many did, but this is a nice feature that it actually can take this off. Like I said, also here's a shutter. I also like this plastic that gives it that vintage 60s and 50s feel. The nice thing also, this is a 35mm, like I said before, camera. So this is up-to-date specs. You can pick them up for $3. You can get 36 photographs on here, and you can get developed in CVS, Walgreens, and any other store. This camera is well-to-do. So if you're like me, which don't really use these type of cameras very much and often, does it make sense to buy them? Yes, it actually does. These cameras may be more expensive toward the $160 or $70, $80 line, but they are worth it to buy. If you're looking for a film camera, you're better to look at the Nikon lines, which was an FG, or the Canon AE1, which was also a very good model. But these are pretty good cameras, and they work very well. So this is my review of the FG Nikon. And the nice thing also is there's a lot of... so people say also, another thing also about this camera, I apologize, is that, well, it is old and vintage, and it's over 30 years old, and there is no customizable pieces, and you can't get... Well, you are wrong, my friend. This can get latches. This can actually get lights for this. So cameras in this era, any camera that is from the 70s, 60s, don't quote me. I think late 60s, yes. 50s, I doubt it, because their specs were not up to par of the day. But yes, I know 70s cameras are definitely cameras you can use. They use 35mm. There was 42mm cameras, which were very old, and they stopped making them in the early 70s, but they still had cameras sold in those days in the 70s that were still 42mm. So 35mm is the standard film. There are different sizes, but the standard that sells the most and is the most popular is the 35mm. So this camera, you can get top quality photographs with a 160 35mm, which will give it a 160 frame aperture. So basically you have to set it. So for example, if it's 160, you're going to have to set it below 200. So this would be 100 and then 150. So one notch below 200. And it does a pretty good job. It does need batteries. It will not work without batteries. So the batteries are about $7, $8 for this, but they last quite long. They are good batteries. It does have a nice tripod. The nice thing about this is it has a metal body, unibody enclosure, which is very nice. Gives it some heft, gives it some rugged hold. These cameras were really made very well for its day. But yeah, this is a really good camera to look at. I would recommend the Nikon lines, like the FG or the Canon. I will have some cameras that you can check out online. And also another thing, if you're going to buy a camera like this, if I were you, I would go online. There are many websites that have tons of pages. Check out the camera, because, you know, you might have different things you might like. I mean, this can and will work with a zoom, so don't worry about that. This will work with zoom. So you have to put on the zoom lens, which you can buy for like this one is more expensive. It's like $120, but they are worth it. They can go up to 20x if I'm not mistaken, and they're pretty good and they're pretty well made. So you can get zoom on this, so nothing to worry about. This can be a zoom camera, and it is pretty well made. So this is my review of the Nikon FG. Very well made camera, and well, I wish to make cameras like this in today's days. I hope you guys love this. I hope you guys like this video. I'm Apple Times. I have lots of random videos about tech and, of course, Google SketchUp, so you can check me up. I'm on Facebook at Apple Times, and hope you enjoy this video. And see you in the next one.